Hey folks, today we'll understand debouncing. So let's get started. Okay, so let's take an example. Let's say there is a scroll event, and every time that scroll event is being fired, a function is being executed. And let's say there is a user on your website and he's scrolling continuously through the web page. But in this scenario, the scroll event will be fired like thousands of times in a few seconds, and you don't want your function to get executed that many times because this will hamper the performance of your application. To tackle this situation, we use debouncing, the concept of debouncing. So debouncing is nothing but a rate limiting technique which forces your function to get executed after a set time. Let me reiterate, debouncing is nothing but a rate limiting technique that forces the function to get executed after a set time. Okay, so let me show you a real life example. Let's go to amazon.in. It's Amazon. I don't know, I should have used Flipkart, but yeah, no worries. Let's get to the topic. So here debouncing comes into picture. See, when let's say I have to search for books, when I press B, you will see that you won't get the results instantly. There will be a pause of few milliseconds. So watch carefully. See, I paused books, so I typed B, and after a few milliseconds I got these results. So these results may be fetched by some API or something like that. So in this way, these results will be fetched from the server. So yeah, this is what is actually happening here. So there is a gap of few milliseconds. So debouncing is being applied here. Let's say there is no debouncing. So in that scenario, what will happen is when I type B, the results will be fetched from the server, and user will get these results. Okay, but he doesn't care about this Bluetooth and all. He has to search for books. Okay, then so this is the first time the request has been made, the results are being fetched. Let's say I type O, again results will be fetched twice, and let's say I type again O, results will be fetched. I type K, results will be fetched, and I type S, results will be fetched. So in total, results will be fetched 5 times in a very short period of time. So that's not very what we'll say very efficient way. Okay, why? Because there are two reasons. Let me tell you the reasons. One, in a very short period of time, as a website owner, I won't be happy that in a very short period of time the results are being fetched for 5 times from the server. Okay, so that's not good for me as a user. As a user also, it's not good for the user also. Why? Because first of all, it will eat into user's data limit. Why? Each time the results are being fetched and these results are being shown, user has to download these results. So one, this thing, and second, this will hamper the user experience if user is on a slow connection. So yeah, so to tackle this, we use debouncing. Here Amazon is having a few milliseconds of gap, that is what we actually have, but for the purpose of understanding, we'll assume that the gap is of 3 seconds. Okay, so after every 3 seconds the function will be called, not after every key press. Okay, so let's say this is an input event or a key press event, whatever. So when I apply debouncing, what will happen? I write BO and then I'll took a pause. I as a user I have not paused after typing B, or I paused after typing BO. So you can see I am getting the result after BO only, not after B. So this is the first time the data is being fetched. Now I will pause after this, writing this whole thing, writing books. So this is the second time the data is fetched. So now in this scenario, the data is being fetched only twice. Okay, and not more than that. So this is a more efficient way, because user also don't care about this data that comes after typing B. No. So what we'll actually do is, whenever there is a pause of let's say after typing B, there is a pause of 2 seconds, but in that 2 seconds the user won't get the data because we are having the timeout of 3 seconds. So yeah, after typing O, the user is pausing for 3 seconds, only then we are getting the data. Then user will type OKS immediately, and after typing this whole books, user will pause for some time, and when this time exceeds 3 seconds, again user will get these results. So there are very less server calls in this scenario, and just bear with me and you will understand it way better after we'll code it out, because like that's the best way to understand. So let's code it out. You will understand debouncing once and for all, that I am sure about. It's HTML5 and I have this input element where I'll write stuff, and then like what I'm actually thinking is I want to have an input field, then I'll have a default, I'll show you how the things are working by default, and then I'll show you how the things are working in case of debouncing, so that you can compare the two. Okay, now so let's have an h2, and inside of that h2 I want a span, and inside of that span I want a class name named default. If you don't know how this shorthand works, watch my video. So yeah, again here also I am having the same thing, but instead of having the class default, I'll have the class debouncing. Okay, and here I'll write default so that you guys could see very clearly what is happening where, and here I'll write debouncing. So first let us see if it's working fine. Yeah, it's working fine. Now let's include the script tag here, script and source, and inside of source I'll just say script.js. okay, now here in JavaScript file, let's first select all the 3 elements. I'll say let input is equals to document dot query selector, and here I'll write input. Similarly, I'll select the both h2s. One is the default, and I'll just name it default. I gave it the class default, and here I'll have the class debouncing. Okay, and I'll write let debouncing. Why default is in red? I think it's some kind of keyword, or yeah. So okay, so let's have def for default and go ahead. Now let's have an event listener on the input event, input dot on the input elements. So we could have like key press, or let's have an input event only. So something will happen every time this event will be fired. What we want to happen, so that every time the user presses a key, something will happen. In the input field, user should press the key in the input field only, So yeah, also in default case, what will happen is we'll say def dot inner text and def dot inner text. Just bear with me and you'll get a very clear picture of what is happening. But also have this, let's have this event being passed. So event dot target dot value. So let me first check this thing if it's working or not. Yes, it's working. And I want you to understand that the data is being fetched from server every time the user presses a key, because every time we have to show the results to the user, the options, the list of options we have to give the user. Okay, so like for that to understand, let's have this, and I'll write here, I'll write just I'll use backticks now. So I'll say def dot inner text and remove this and have it in curly braces. I hope you understand how arrow functions work. And I'll just say I plus plus every time this thing is being fired, and then this event dot target dot value, I'll wrap it inside these curly braces, and I'll also wanted to show you that event is being fired. So I'll say data fetched, because data is, I wanted to show you that every time the key is being pressed, data is being fetched from the server. So yeah, we'll have this. Okay, okay, let's see. Okay, so since there are 8 letters, data is being fetched every time the letter is being typed, and here where we are doing just simply doing this thing, that actually some fetch call will happen here, so that data is being fetched every time this input event will occur, data is being fetched. So yeah, that will happen by default. Now let me code things what that will happen in case of debouncing. So yeah, let's optimize stuff. We won't do this thing, we just do the optimized version. So here from line number 9 I'm coding the optimized stuff. So I again wanted you to see the data is, how many times the data is being fetched. So I'll say let j is equals to 0, and we also have to clear some timeout. So I'll say timeout id, and don't worry, I'll just tell you what I'm doing, but first let me do it. So let timeout id and let it be undefined, like there is no solid reason to provide this timeout id any value. So yeah, what we'll do is we'll say timeout id is equals to set timeout, and here we'll do something, and before this we'll clear timeout, and I'll pass timeout id here. Don't worry, let me code it out first. And here after set timeout, let's say again 3 seconds, we want data to be fetched and the options to be shown only after set timeout, not every time the user presses a key, and not after 2 seconds, only after 3 seconds. Let's say after 2 seconds user presses a key, then again timer will start again from 0 to 3 seconds. Okay, so what I want here is, I will just say, I'll just have a callback here where I'll do a few things. I'll first increase the value of j using j++, then I'll do debouncing dot inner text is equals to the same thing. Okay, instead of I will have j here, and I want it to happen after 3 seconds. So I'll type 3000, so 3000 milliseconds. Okay, so yeah, I think it should work, and then I'll tell you every line what is happening, but first let me test it out. Okay, so you can see in case of default, after every word the data is being fetched, hence the total times the data is being fetched is 5, and here only after I wrote the Rajat, the full word, the data is being fetched. So fetching happens only once. and I write something else here. Again, data is being fetched 13 times here, and here data is fetched only 2 times. See, the data is being fetched only 3 times. So like that's a huge difference between these two, no? So that's why we use debouncing, because even user doesn't want the data to be fetched after B. It's of no use to him. So we'll fetch the data whenever there is a pause, and in general the pause happens when the user has typed the full letter he wants to type. So yeah, that's why we use this, and let me just make you understand the code. So yeah, no worries, I took this I or j so that I could make you understand that how many times the data is fetched. Yeah, that's the only reason why I used I and j. And why I used timeout id, this thing is important to understand. I used it because let's again take the example of books. When I press B and we have this set timeout of 3 seconds, but after B there is a pause of 2 seconds, and then I pressed O. So when I pressed O, the timer, the 2 seconds that are being the timer of 2 seconds that has started after pressing B should be cleared from the memory, and the timer should start again from 0 after pressing O. Okay, so that after pressing O, only after pressing O, if 3 seconds gets completed, we'll fetch the data. So that should happen. That's why we have to clear the previous timeout ID. So yeah, so we have to clear the previous timeout. That is the only reason we are storing it here, and we are clearing it, like for every iteration we are clearing the timeout for the previous iteration. So that's what we are doing. And yeah, that's all about debouncing. If you guys understood it, and if you guys have extracted any value from this video, I'll really appreciate if you could hit that subscribe button and subscribe to my channel. So yeah, go ahead and do it, and we'll meet next time with this throttling, with the video of throttling. So yeah, okay guys, we'll meet next time.